All right. So today we're going to look at complementary and supplementary angles. We've looked at supplementary angles thus far, but we're also going to get into complementary angles. So just a reminder of the linear pair postulate, which basically told us if two angles form a linear pair, then they are supplementary, right? A linear pair are two angles that are adjacent to each other, and they are supplementary, meaning they equal to 180 degrees. So again, supplementary angles are two angles whose measure have a sum of 180 degrees. So for example, this angle right here and this angle right here, if we added 60 plus 120, we would get 180. And because we get 180, those are supplementary angles. Same thing goes for here. We have something that looks like a linear pair because it's two adjacent angles. And if we added those two together, we would get 180 degrees. So supplementary angles equal or have a sum of 180 degrees. Okay. So here's some example problems that we might see whenever it comes to supplementary angles. You may have a problem like the one on the left that basically just asks you to find the missing angle. So if we know that's a linear pair, right? Because linear pairs are adjacent angles that form a straight line. So basically if I add this and this together, I have to get 180 degrees. So how would I solve that? Well, I would do 180 minus 121. And what does that equal? That equals 59 degrees. So that tells me that this angle right here is 59 degrees, right? Because that's a linear pair. Linear pairs are two adjacent angles that form a straight line. Linear pairs are supplementary, meaning they add up to 180 degrees. And so that's how I'd solve. We also will see a problem like the one we see here on the right, where basically what's happening here is we aren't given exact values. We're actually given equations. But the same thing, we still have a linear pair, so these two will still equal to 180 degrees. So if I add this and this, I have to get 180. So the way you would do that is you do 3q plus 15q plus 18 is equal to 180, right? Because the linear pairs, supplementary equal to 180. So then you would just go ahead and solve for q. 18q plus 18, 180, subtract 18, 18q equals 162. Q is equal to 9. Now that we know that Q is equal to 9, we can go ahead and plug those in to find out what the missing angles are. So 3, 9, 27, 15, 3 plus 18, 153. If we add 153 plus 27, we get 180. And so therefore, those are in fact supplementary angles. So that's the different ways that we can get problems and the different ways we go about solving. So that's supplementary angles. Now we're going to look at complementary angles. Complementary angles are kind of the same. There are two angles, but they have a sum of 90 degrees. So basically, when you add those two complementary angles together, they have to equal to 90 degrees. So 27 plus 63 equals 90 degrees. So those are complementary angles. Same thing here. A 90-degree angle is a right angle, like we see here. But basically, if you add 40 plus 50, you get 90 degrees. So supplementary 180, complementary 90 degrees. Right? So here's some example problems, very similar to what we looked at before, but now we want to get that sum to be complementary. So 90 degrees. So 90 minus 62 gives me 27. So this missing angle is 27. Now how would I go about solving the other one? Well, I know those are complementary because they form a 90-degree angle. Am I going to post this recording? Yes, I am. So this forms a right angle, which is indicated by this box-looking figure right here. And so we would do, 2x plus x equals 90, which gives me 3x equals 90. Divide by 3 on both sides. X is equal to 30. So now I can go ahead and plug those in. So 230, this is 60, this is just x, so 30. Double check it. 60 plus 30 equals 90, right? So those are the different ways that we can go about solving for the missing angle measures of complementary and supplementary angles. So once again, supplementary are going to be those that are equal to 180. And then complementary are going to be those that are equal to 90. Does anyone have any questions about complementary, supplementary angles? Or how I even found these missing angle measures for both supplementary and complementary? And normally you would be told directly something like, these two angles are complementary, find the missing angle measure. So you wouldn't just have to assume like this. Okay, so two more things we're gonna go over. So we're going to get into the congruent complement theorem and the congruent supplement theorem. This was the congruent complements theorem. Complementary, 90 degrees. And this basically says if two angles are complements of the same angle or of congruent angles, then the two angles are congruent. Sounds like a mouthful, but basically what that means is, say that this one right here, this angle right here is equal to 30 degrees, okay? Now say that this angle right here is equal to 60, okay? And then lastly, let's say that this angle right here was also equal to 30 degrees. Okay, well, it's basically saying that if I know that angle 1 plus angle 2 are complements of each other, so they equal to 90, and I know that angle 3 and angle 2 are complements of each other, so they also equal to 90. Well, if I know that, then what I can assume is that 30 or angle 1 is congruent to angle, is congruent to angle 3. So basically what it's saying is that these two would be congruent to each other because they're both complements of the angle, which is 60, which is our angle 2. So that's basically what it's saying. Same thing goes for this other side. Say that 4 was 30. Say that 5 was 60. Let me actually change the colors of this. Okay, 5 was 60. Oh, no, I didn't mean to do that. Okay, 60. 6 was 60 as well. And 7 was 30. Well, basically, we can determine which are complements of each other or congruent to each other based on this relationship. So, for example, say that angle 5 plus angle 4 were complements of each other, right? They both equal 90. And say that we know that angle 7 and angle 6 are complements of each other, right? They both equal 90. Well, then because of that, what we can assume is the congruency between our 30-degree angles and the 60-degree angles. So more specifically, that would look like 30, 30, 60, 60, and then those would be congruent to each other, right? They're exactly the same. So that's what the complements theorem tells us, okay? We also have something that is equivalent to that, and that is the congruent supplements theorem. But in this instance, what we're going to look at is supplementary angles, so angles that equal to 180 degrees. So again, it says if two angles are supplements of the same angle or congruent angles, then those two angles are congruent. So for example, say that this angle right here was 70, this angle right here was also 70, and this angle right here was 110. Okay, we'll say that I knew that angle 1 plus angle 2 equaled 180. But say that I also knew that angle 2 and angle 3 were also equal to 180. Well, because I know that both of those angles are both supplements of my larger angle, so this angle is a supplement to this angle is a supplement to this angle. Well, because both of those angles are supplements of that same angle, then what I can assume is that those two angles, the 70 and the 70, are congruent to each other. So that's basically how we get to the congruent supplements theorem. And then the same thing would go for the other side. Okay? So any questions about the congruent supplements theorem or congruent complements theorem? So again, it's basically just saying the congruent complements theorem is basically saying if angle 1 is a complement to angle 2, and angle 3 is also a complement to angle 2. Well, then because of that, those two would have to be congruent to each other. 30 and 30 would have to be congruent to each other. Same thing here. If 1 is congruent to or supplement to angle 2, if 3 is a supplement to angle 2, well then 1 and 3 would have to be congruent to each other. Okay? Why would they have to be congruent to each other? We'll say that I knew that a certain angle was a supplement to 110. Well, the way that I would solve that is I would go 180 minus 110 equals 70. So that supplement angle would have to be 70. It has to be 70 in every case because in order to be a supplement, it has to equal to 180. And so that's why they have to be congruent to each other. We have to assume they're congruent to each other because it can't be any different value besides 70. Okay. Any questions? Okay. So again, supplementary angles equal 180. Complementary angles, 90. Congruent complements theorem and congruent supplements theorem, same thing. But the complements theorem says the two angles are complements of the same angle. And the congruent supplements theorem states if two angles are supplements of the same angle, or if congruent angles and the two angles are congruent. Okay. Any questions about anything we looked at today? Okay. 1 second.